Hello everyone, and welcome to the Willow Cove Crafts knitting and sewing podcast. Hello everyone, and welcome to Willow Cove Crafts, my channel here on YouTube where I talk about knitting and sewing and my other crafty endeavors. My name is Emily. You can find me on both Ravelry and Instagram as Willow Cove Crafts. And today is March something? I don't know what the date is, but it is the last Sunday in March, which means that it is time to do a monthly recap and talk about everything that I worked on in the last month. As always, if you like today's video, please give it a thumbs up, leave it a comment. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to be notified when I post future videos. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. I'm really excited to get started and tell you all what I have been up to the last month. This month I have no finished objects. I have 3 knitting works in progress and 1 sewing work in progress. I will say that generally I've been trying to keep my works in progress down to a minimum. I've talked about that in a couple of my more recent episodes. But for reasons I will explain to you today, I have looped a couple more things into the rotation. Yes, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by the number of projects I have going on, but I did start them all for specific reasons. Even though there's a lot of them going on at the moment, I feel like they all kind of serve a purpose at this point in time. So yes, I have a little bit more to show you this time around than I normally do. To start out today, I will talk about what I am wearing. This sweatshirt is something I sewed a couple of months ago. This is the Toaster Sweater pattern by Soho 7. I believe this is view A. There's 2 versions of the sweater in the pattern. This is the one with the funnel neck and raglan shaped shoulders. And I sewed this out of a waffle fabric I purchased off of Etsy. I will link all of that below. And yes, I made this about almost 3 months ago at this point, and it has been a wardrobe staple this winter. I have worn this pretty much every time it has been clean. Gotten a lot of use out of this. I think I've talked about this before, but I'm hoping to make a few more of these probably when we get into the colder months. It is the end of March. Even though it snowed 8 inches yesterday, we are at the tail end of winter. I'm starting to think a little bit more about, making summer items. It's hard to believe because again, we have a ton of snow outside at the moment, but generally the weather has been warming up a little bit and, the summer will come again. But yes, I really like this pattern, hoping to make some more of them once the weather starts to cool off again in 6 months or so. My first work in progress that I have to show you today is the same one I showed you during last month's recap. And I was hoping that this would be a finished object this month, but I lost a little bit of steam on it, / it was really starting to hurt my hands working on this. So I've been working on it a little bit more sparingly over the last month, which obviously means it got done a little bit slower and is not quite finished, but that is my Ingrid sweater. Here it is. This is a pattern by PetiteKnit, and some of the really standout design features of this. So it's a top-down drop shoulder sweater, and it has these really striking horizontal texture panels, which then continue on to the sleeves. So since last month, I put a marker where I was, as always, So as of last month, I had knit the whole body of the sweater and had just started on the collar. So you can see my cute little Sucre Miniatures Tiramisu Progress Keeper. So I finished the collar and then I knit the first sleeve. And I have gotten maybe about a third of the way done with the second sleeve. So getting really close to finishing this. I did lose a little mojo on this too because it's a big, thick sweater, and like I mentioned, our weather's actually been pretty nice the last couple weeks. Definitely not weather to be wearing a big, chunky wool sweater in. So I don't really think I'm gonna get to wear this until it gets cold again. And so I haven't really felt any sort of rush to finish it. As I mentioned, it has been hurting my hands quite a bit, especially this section here. So this is a mock cable. It's really easy to do, but there's just something about the way you have to like flick your wrist and pick up the stitches that really hurts my hands. I find this section really tiring. So anyways, a little here, a little there. I'm hoping that over the course of the next month, this will be a finished object. I'm trying really hard not to rush my making. This is something I've been thinking about a lot. I've been feeling very like overwhelmed and pressured to produce, especially making YouTube videos, posting pictures on Instagram. I'm sure this is something that a lot of people face, where you see how much other makers produce. You know, oh, people can knit a sweater in 2 weeks, and you know, some people just like churn things out, and it's easy to feel like you have to knit very fast in order to keep up, or knit very fast in order to have content to share. It's this whole like, you know, social media and knitting is an interesting combination because social media, I feel like, encourages speed and efficiency and new things, but knitting and sewing by definition are pretty slow hobbies, slow processes. And so yeah, I'm trying to be really mindful of the pressure that social media puts on me to be making things really fast and finishing things really fast, and just like remembering that that's all fake. Like none of that like really matters. And I knit because I enjoy it and I like the process. I definitely think I'm more of a process knitter than a product knitter. And there's no rush, you know? Like, what am I rushing for? I feel that way about a lot of things. Another one I feel that way about is books. One of my other really big hobbies is reading. And some of the people on Bookstagram are reading a book every other day. And I can't keep up, but I also like don't have to. Like, I read because I like to, and I enjoy reading, not to, you know, have a count of how many books I read at the end of the year. Like, that's just not important. Anyways, I digress. That was quite the tangent. Basically to say, I'm not rushing this sweater. My biggest fear, I tend to like set things aside and not finish them. So I'm trying really hard to like make sure I'm still working on this regularly, even though it's slowed down a bit, because I don't want it to end up hibernating. So yes, hopefully next time this is a finished object, just because I want it to be done and in my stack of sweaters, and then I can, you know, move on to other things. I have not talked about the yarn I used, so let me grab this. I am holding 3 strands for this sweater. So the original sweater calls for a DK weight held with a mohair. I didn't have a DK weight on hand that I wanted to use, so I decided to use a cone of Holst Garn Supersoft, which is a fingering weight, and I'm holding 2 strands of that. So this is like a little tag. So again, that's Holst Garn Supersoft. I'm using the color Almond. And this is actually from an extra ball of yarn I bought because I thought I was gonna run out. Again, I had a 500-gram cone, which should have been enough to finish the sweater. And then I was working on it and I was like, I'm gonna run out of yarn. There's no way I have enough yarn left. And so I bought an extra 100 grams of the yarn. And the closer I get to finishing this sweater, the more I'm realizing that I don't think I needed that extra yarn. I don't know how it's possible. I was so certain that I was gonna run out of yarn. And now I think I'm definitely gonna have over 100 grams left over, which is what I bought. So I hope that makes sense. But I don't think I would have needed that extra yarn. Ultimately, it wasn't super expensive. The Holst Garn is pretty affordable. And I didn't buy that much extra. And it did buy me peace of mind. You know, it was nice to be really confident that I wasn't gonna run out. But yeah, I don't think I needed it. I think I'm gonna have a ton of leftover yarn. So I'm holding 2 strands of that, and then I'm holding 1 strand of Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair. This is in the colorway Mushroom Rose, which this is probably one of my favorite Knitting for Olive colorways. I think it's just the most beautiful, soft, like pinky tan. Excuse me. There is like a flock of doves on my porch. I think they are making a home or a nest over there. There's like 4 or 5 of them that just keep coming and landing on my porch. I'm very distracted by them. Anyways, yes, so that is my first work in progress, the Ingrid Sweater by PetiteKnit. Almost done. Getting so close. And yes, I won't be able to wear it, but it will go into my pile of sweaters to have fresh and new for the fall and winter later this year. My next work in progress is not a new cast on. If you watched my like unfinished whips series, you may remember this project. This is something that I started maybe about a year ago and worked on it, got a pretty decent amount of the way through, and then chucked it aside in favor of something else. But as I mentioned, my sweater was really starting to hurt my hands. It was also that sweater, it's almost done, right? And the fabric is super thick. Like it's a really sturdy sweater. It's really chunky. And I do a little bit of knitting while I'm at work. I think I've mentioned this before. I always feel weird saying that because it feels a little scandalous. But yeah, my boss is also a knitter, so I don't feel like that strange. But anyways, if I have a meeting at work that, you know, I'm just listening in or I'm talking and don't have to take notes, I will, you know, have a little bit of knitting just to keep my hands busy. I find it helps me focus. So I do knit at work, and the sweater was just becoming a bit too cumbersome to travel with. It was starting to not fit in my backpack. It was just like too much. The 3 strands was like a bit tricky to deal with while I was on a work call. So anyways, I needed something new to work on at work. Preferably something simple, obviously, like I am working and don't want to be like too distracted by what I'm working on, you know, something simple and easy. And so I went and looked at some of my old whips that have just been kind of sitting around, and I picked up my half and half triangles wrap, which is a pattern by Purl Soho. and I don't even think I'm gonna be able to fit it all on the screen. It's pretty massive. I like how my reason for starting a new project was because it was getting too big. And then I went and picked up a really big project. This is really big, but it like compresses really nicely. It is fingering weight, so it squishes into a ball nicely and just fits in my backpack a little easier. But anyways, I don't remember when I last worked on this or when I last showed it as an active work in progress on an episode. So I have no idea where I was the last time. So I just went and put a marker on it where I was a couple weeks ago when I picked it back up again. So, you know, I got about maybe 4 or 5 inches added. So the way this pattern works, I'm sure you've seen it before. It's super popular. I'm all tangled. You pick 2 colors of yarn, again, fingering weight, and you knit a triangle. So this is my first triangle that I knit. And then once you're done with that big right triangle, you then knit a second triangle to make it into a square. So I'm on my second triangle. I'm getting pretty close to being done. I have about this many like reps and turns left to do. And yes, this project is quite the commitment. It is 6 skeins of fingering weight yarn, so it is a big guy. The yarn I am using is the yarn that is called for in the pattern, which is Purl Soho Linen Quill. And my colors are honey pink, which was my first triangle. It doesn't quite pick up on the camera exactly right. I do think when I first look at this color, it does look like a light yellow, kind of a tan, but there are little flecks of pink in it. It's a really interesting, complex color that I don't think the camera really does justice to. But anyways, that's my first color. And then my second color is the Turmeric yellow. A nice, bright, fun spring color. And yes, again, I've pretty much only been working on this at work. I just keep it in my backpack, and yeah, it's the perfect project. It's just knitting. It's all over garter stitch. There's no like real counting you have to do. You can just kind of mindlessly go. And yeah, I think this is gonna probably be my backpack project until it is finished. So yes, really enjoy this. The linen quill, oh, I don't have a tag. I'm gonna talk about the linen quill again for my next project, and I will share with you the specs of that yarn. But it's a really interesting, really special yarn, one of my favorites, and it is also what I'm using for my third work in progress, which I will talk about now. All right, so my third and final knitting work in progress is a new cast on. I had my sweater, was hurting my hands. I started my half and half. I kind of wanted to keep that as work knitting because it is so simple and easy. So I was kind of thinking that maybe I should start a third project just to have something else to work on to offset my sweater because it was hurting my hands. So I had a ponder. I thought about it for a couple days. I don't think it was an impulse cast on. I definitely thought about it. And I decided to start a new shawl. I have been lusting after the Aurora Cabin shawl by Stephen West for a couple months now. He released that pattern in December, I want to say, sometime late last year. And my decision to make this shawl and why I wanted to work on it so bad was, I don't know how to say this nicely. So Stephen West does his mystery knit along every October, and I have participated the last couple years, including this past year in 2022. And if you haven't heard, how that works is he always does a shawl, and you have no idea what it's gonna look like, and he releases clues throughout the month of October to make this shawl. And this year, he did the, what was it called? Twists and Turns Mystery Knit Along. And I did not like that shawl. I'll say it. Not only did I, the design, again, this is all just my opinion. Everyone has different likes and, aesthetics, and Stephen West is a very particular aesthetic. His stuff is a bit more, I would say, innovative and creative. It's definitely not like your classic knit patterns. So anyways, going into it, you always know that there's a chance that something kind of wacky is gonna happen, and that's part of the fun of the mystery knit along. So I accept the terms and conditions there. So anyways, we started working on the twists and turns. Not only, the design was a little bit, too out there for me, but I also did not enjoy working on it. The physical construction of the shawl was just so irritating to me. I hated working on it. So I wasn't liking how it was looking, and I didn't like how it came together. And if you've seen that shawl or you worked on that shawl, you probably know what I'm talking about, but there was just a lot of really tedious pieces to that shawl. I didn't feel like it flowed nicely. And when I say flow nicely, I mean the physical act of knitting. I just couldn't get into it. I was constantly checking the instructions. There was just no intuition to it, which I think is ultimately my favorite type of knitting. I really like when projects have maybe a simple or intuitive pattern, and I don't have to be constantly checking the pattern or notes. I can just kind of, work for a little bit and just kind of know what's going on without consulting the pattern every other line. There's a time and a place for that, but I do think my favorite type of knitting is a little bit more intuitive. I don't know if that makes any sense. But anyways, there was just a lot of little nitpicky things in that pattern. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like how it was looking. I did end up frogging it. So anyways, all that to say, that was a really long-winded explanation of how much I didn't like the mystery knit along this year. I'm sorry. I feel bad saying that because that is a design that someone came out with. Again, it's just not to my taste, and it was ultimately, I think, more, I didn't enjoy the process of knitting it. The final shawl is very interesting. You should definitely go check it out. It's this kind of structural looking thing. It almost looks like a superhero shield to me. That might be your thing, but it is not mine, and it was a tedious pattern. So anyways, that happened in October, and then Stephen also does the hybrid knit along every December. I think that one usually starts around Christmas or shortly after Christmas. And that one is not a mystery, I believe. I've never participated in that knit along. I don't think it's a mystery, and it's more of an opportunity to just really settle into winter and hibernate while working on a big shawl project. And for the hybrid knit along this year, he released the Aurora cabin shawl, which I fell in love with almost immediately. It was everything I wanted from the mystery knit along, but did not get. It looked very interesting, but also it has these big sections of just what looks like very easy texture. There's different sections, so you have some interest, but then, like I said, there's these long moments where you don't have to consult the pattern. It looks very intuitive, and yeah, I really, really liked that shawl, and I've been thinking about knitting it ever since I saw it. Stephen West's patterns are not really my style per se, so I don't know if I'm actually gonna ever wear this shawl, but I do like it as an art piece. I imagine it just like thrown over the back of a chair. It's almost like decor for me. I just want to knit it because it looks fun. Again, I definitely think I'm more of a process knitter, and I just want to look at it. It's just a fun piece to have lying around and to, you know, decorate a chair or what have you. So anyways, I've been talking for 7 minutes about my decision to make this shawl. So I needed a new project. I thought about it for a couple weeks and decided to cast on the Aurora Cabin Shawl by Stephen West. So here is where I'm at. And I am loving working on this. I think it's super fun. This slip stitch section is a little more tedious. I do have to consult the pattern, but once you're done with that section, you get a big section of garter and stockinette, which I'm really looking forward to. So yeah, and this is actually upside down. It goes like this. So it is a semicircular shawl, and it's got these alternating sections of like slip stitches, just some simple textures, and then these really interesting. This section repeats 3 times, I believe, throughout the course of the shawl. And it is really interesting. And part of the reason I wanted to make the shawl was I wanted to know how this worked. I was looking at pictures of the pattern and I was like, how did he do that? It's really simple. It looks way more complicated than it actually is. You do end up with a lot of ends. He does recommend carrying your yarn in this section. I can't do that. I cannot carry my yarn for more than 2 or 3 rows without cutting it. It's a personal problem. So you don't necessarily have to have all these ends, but I decided to sew them all in, to cut and sew them all in every time I change colors in this slip stitch section. So yes, that is my early progress on the Aurora Cabin Shawl. The yarn I'm using, as I alluded to, is also the Purl Soho linen quill. I'm trying to use stash more. I have a sizable yarn stash, and so I have quite a bit of linen quill in my stash. This whole top shelf pretty much is linen quill. Not all of it, but most of it. So I kind of went diving in there and picked out 5 colors. The pattern calls for 1 skein each of 5 colors of fingery weight yarn. Does that make sense? So anyways, like I said, I'm using the linen quill. This is the same yarn I'm using for my half and half triangles wrap. And the fiber content is 50% fine Highland wool, 35% alpaca, and 15% linen. And yeah, it's a really interesting yarn. It's not the softest, but it has like quite a bit of drape. We've got fluff flying everywhere. And yeah, it's one of my favorites. If you haven't worked with it before, I suggest trying it. It's soft, but still a little bit rustic, and that linen gives it a really nice drape, the linen and the alpaca. So the colors I'm using are, let's see if I can remember these. This is Reed Gray. I'm doing this from memory, so these might be not quite. I will put them in the description below in case something is incorrect. This is Raw Sienna. This is Bird's Egg Blue, I want to say. And then we have Fresh Nutmeg. And then we have Baked Earth. So let's see if I can hold these all up together. So there's my color palette. Again, you need 5 skeins of fingering weight yarn, 5 colors. And yes, I really liked this color palette. It felt a little retro to me, which I'm really into these days. And yeah, I think this will look really nice draped over a chair. So that is my Aurora cabin shawl. Very early on in the process, I have been trying to prioritize finishing my sweater, but you know, I do get to this point where my hands start to really hurt and I need something that's not quite so chunky. And this has been a really nice palette cleanser to work on a couple of evenings here and there throughout the month. So once I finish my sweater, this will be my main project. So hopefully there will be a lot of progress on it over the course of the next month. All right, and that is it for knitting content. Now I do have one sewing work in progress, which I have shown during my last few monthly recaps. I have been working on the Inner Beauty quilt, which is a pattern by Melanie Traylor of Southern Charm Quilts. And I have been working on that for a while. It's a big queen size quilt. There's a lot going on in it. I am using Kona Cotton Solids by Robert Kaufman Fabrics. I don't remember the specific fabrics. Yes, sorry about that. But I've been working on this quilt for the last couple of months, and this month I did quite a bit of sewing. I was really feeling the sewing mojo. So last month I was still working on my individual blocks, and this month I finished all of my blocks. And it's really hard to show you. I have this huge stack of all different kinds of blocks. The Inner Beauty quilt is a sampler quilt, and so there's lots of different types of blocks that you're making. And I will quick show you one of each of the types of blocks I sewed this month. So I made these. I have no idea what this is called. All of these I think are pretty traditional quilt blocks. I'm still kind of a new quilter, so I don't know what anything's called. But we have these. This one. This one, and I'll show you these two together. These are pretty much the same, just the colors are reversed. So we have a set of each of those. And then I did another set of Sawtooth Stars, which are these. And then, yeah, after I finished all of those, that was all of my blocks. And I started putting together the whole quilt top. I haven't gotten super far, and this is gonna be really tough to show you, but I have started sewing together my blocks. This is actually upside down, not that it matters, but you know, I, at the moment, just have this strip of blocks that are coming together. The quilt is put together in quadrants, so this is my first quadrant. You're never gonna be able to see all of that, but you know, you'll get a good idea. And I'm really happy with how this is coming together. I talked about this during my last monthly recap, but I was really nervous this quilt was not going to be attractive. I thought it might be a little ugly. I don't know. I was really doubting my color selection. I just was not feeling it for the longest time. I really liked my fabrics together in a stack, and then I started making blocks and was like, something about this just doesn't feel like it's working. But I am happy to say that now that I'm putting them together, I'm really liking it. I think it's going to work and it's gonna look good. But yeah, there was a moment there where I was like, have I made a horrible mistake? But no, I am really liking it. It's definitely not my normal color palette. And I talked about this a bit. I think the solid colors really threw me. Like, the solid colors were just so striking and less blendy than a print fabric would be. But really happy with how it's turning out. I'm excited to continue putting the quilt top together. I feel like that's like making the blocks is exciting. Like, I really like seeing my little stack of blocks get bigger and bigger, but then like finally putting them all together into the final quilt top is so satisfying. I'm really excited. So I'm probably gonna work on this a little more this afternoon. And yeah, I don't know where I'll be on this next month. It's possible that I'll have a finished quilt top. Not making any promises. Sewing together all of the blocks is like, it feels like I'm in the final stretch, but it is still a lot of sewing. Each of these blocks is 6 inches, 6.5 unfinished, and then in the final quilt it will be 6 inches. And 6-inch blocks in a queen size quilt, like, there's a lot of blocks there. I think there's over 200 blocks in the quilt, and you have to sew them all together. So while it feels like I'm coming towards the end, I still have a lot of sewing to do. So we'll see if this quilt top gets done in the next month. That would be really exciting if I could finish that up. And then I will have to take it to my mom's house and actually quilt it and turn it into a quilt sandwich. So yes, slowly but surely this one's coming along. I'm really enjoying it. I'm finding it so satisfying to maybe almost have a finished quilt top. And yes, I will continue working on that over the next month. All right, and that is it for me today. That is everything I worked on in the month of March 2023. I'm really hoping, looking ahead to April, that I can finish my sweater. I think at the minimum I can finish my sweater. It would be really nice to also either finish my, well, I don't know if I'm gonna finish my half and half wrap because I'm reserving that for work, but I might also finish my quilt top. That would be a really fun goal to meet in the month of April. But ultimately, like I said, I don't want to put pressure on myself to finish things in a certain time frame. I'm in this mood of like really trying to slow down and relax and really enjoy the moments that I get to spend making. That is ultimately, at the end of the day, the most important thing. So I hope you had a wonderful March. I hope that the weather is lovely where you are as we're heading into spring here in the Northern Hemisphere, and I hope you get to spend a lot of time crafting over the next month. And this is just your friendly reminder to slow down, take a deep breath, and enjoy what you're working on. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that you all spend a little bit of your day with me, and I will chat with you soon. Bye, everyone.